Okay, great. Yes. Okay, I can see you. I can hear you. Everything is fine. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ravynn. And I will start off by saying I'm very excited for this. I actually do know Ravynn. Before she joined Not Okay Club, Ravynn and I went to college together. So it's very exciting to have a chance to talk to you now, post-college, to see what you've been up to, and also to talk about your debut novel, which is extremely exciting because I know that you've been working towards this for a while. So before I talk about what I know about the book, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. If you could give us a little introduction, who you are, and what your what book we'll be talking about today.
Absolutely. So, to clarify, I was a grad student at William & Mary.
That's true.
Yes. I actually went to the University of Virginia for undergrad, which is important to this story because while I was at UVA, I was a French major, which, as you might imagine, has a lot to do with how the book, came to be. Very much part of the origin story for that. But the book that we're talking about today is Love Requires Chocolate. It is my debut novel. It follows a type A theater nerd named Whitney Curry, who's from the DC area, who goes to Paris, France for a semester abroad to do some research on her idol, Josephine Baker. And she's got this really elaborate list of all the things that she wants to do while she's in Paris, but falling in love with her French tutor was not on it. So that is how, we get Love Requires Chocolate. I think a little bit about me that's useful is I am from Virginia, very Virginian. I'm born and raised in Suffolk, went to the University of Virginia undergrad, went to William & Mary grad, and then taught at the University of Richmond for a couple of years. So I, bounced around Virginia schools. And I think one of the things that's really interesting in thinking about how I became a writer, right, is because I was from kind of like a nowhere city in Virginia, I was always daydreaming about how I was going to leave, how I was going to get out of this place, where I was going to go. And Paris, France was always at the top of the list. When I got to college and started doing more research about other Black writers in history, Black artists, I noticed that there was this trend that Black artists, writers tended to see Paris as a sort of haven for creative work. And so that became, I would say a secondary concern, but of mine in terms of, my scholarship. I did kind of media studies, comicsy work for a really long time. But one of the things that definitely haunted me as well was thinking about that relationship that Black Americans have with France, and especially Black artists. So I think that's a good kind of initial answer to your question.
Yeah, I really, now that you mentioned that, there's so many artists I can think of off of my who went to France and to Paris to write or to do research and to come up do music as well. That's awesome. That actually that makes me wonder if your time, you said you were doing media studies and you were studying French. Is that something that you use to kind of build Whitney Curry's character? Were there pieces of you and your obsessions that you put into her?
Oh, definitely. I think what's interesting about writing fiction, right, is that it is fiction. It is totally imagined. And also the things that preoccupy me, the things that haunt me, the questions that I have that haunt me make it into the book. So it's almost like if I didn't have the books, those things would have nowhere else to go. So it's kind of I went to grad school and I decided to study comics. I decided to kind of do new media, digital stuff. I, Black girls and in that arena. But I had this of theater, right? I had this love of French that I knew. I basically had gotten to the end of my journey with French. I thought I wanted to go to grad school I knew I wanted to go to grad school, and the French department was very much priming me to go to grad school for French. The big thing was, though, I had plateaued in my speaking such that I was as good as I was gonna get unless I lived in France or I lived in a francophone country, and I didn't want to move to a francophone country to be able to do grad school, which was why I ended up shifting my focus, because I was studying French comics like as my undergraduate like research area. And then I just shifted the focus from French comics to American comics. So that's kind of how that shift occurred. But I had all of these other just like needling interests. Like I was a theater kid, off and on for like most of,
Same.
high school and college. Yeah. But it was never my personality, if that makes sense. Like it was very much a thing that was very important to me and that I had a lot of questions about, and that clearly was like defining, but it wasn't the thing that made me, right? So like it's almost kind of like the scraps or the road's not taken, like the questions that I had but didn't want to quite go all the way down there. Like I get to kind of like do that in my books, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a little like a detour from what you were academically studying to be like, this is my real interest. Because doing like superhero comic stuff, well, I realize I didn't say that on here, but you did do a lot of like superhero. You kind of mentioned it when you talked about American comics. The American comics that you got into, it was like Black girl superhero stuff, right? Which was really cool. Could you talk a little bit more about how you did that, and then how that led you to a more romance track? Like it seems like the comics was the first love, and then pivoting off onto branching out to your other interests.
In my mind, it all makes sense. I know it feels very like all over the place, but in my mind, it makes sense. And the thing that I'm going to tell you that I think kind of helps people understand the like connection is that my two favorite pieces of superhero media are Smallville and the second Tom Holland Spider-Man, Far From Home, because they're essentially superhero teenage rom-coms, right? Like it's literally just like these teenagers with superpowers not being able to communicate effectively with each other, and then being in on again, off again relationships for like
so true.
Right?
That is the plot.
That's the plot. And I love it because it's like you're also like not quite good at being a superhero, and you're also like not good at the interpersonal relationships, and it's just like how does the power thing, like the thing that really truly I love about Tom Holland in those movies is that he kills the like, I really just want to give the pretty girl a necklace, but I have to go be a superhero, and I'm not quite really good at that yet. Like it, you know what I mean? Like it like that energy, just I love it. And I want that for Black girls.
Yes.
Right? Like I want that energy for Black girls, because I think one of the kind of hard things about Black girl superheroes is that you're also kind of dealing with the superwoman myth as well. And so there's a pressure to be perfect in the superhero arena for Black girls that doesn't really exist for white boys or like white men superheroes in the same way. And I got into Black girl superheroes for that reason. Like I wanted Black girls that were just like chaotic, and you know what I mean? Like I basically want the energy of like a Tom Holland Spider-Man, but in a Black girl. And I still haven't found like the perfect match, but I really love, and I've done a lot of work on Riri Williams Ironheart. She's kind of like a different, she's kind of stoic, and I think you got to think about her differently. She's not quite as like lighthearted. And I think probably the person that comes really close is like Moon Girl, Lunella Lafayette. But she still has a lot of like, there's a seriousness to her, because I think part of the thing that happens, right, is they're super geniuses, right? Like they're apart from their peers because they're so brilliant. You know what I mean? And so they kind of don't have the same interpersonal stuff that I want that like other characters get.
Yeah. I definitely see that through line. Like that explanation, it perfectly tracks, because even with like Whitney's character and just like her kind of being all over the place and the whole thing with like her list and really trying to stick to the list. I didn't finish the book, but I'm like, I read up to, I'm like, when she got to the school, like she's very much focused on having this kind of like, not even picturesque, well, picturesque, yes, but like the sort of like typical teenager life, but then in Paris, then there's just different things that come and like interact with that so that you can't have it. It definitely does follow that same like chaotic superhero teen vibe where they're like in a new environment, they don't really know what's going on and they're trying to like do their best to, so I definitely see how that tracks. That makes sense. So that's very interesting. So going, because you said you did a lot of like writing with like the Riri Ironheart, writing like comics and smaller like shorter stories, because you also did some short fiction and things like that. How was writing a full-length novel a different experience? Was it a different experience, or like what was your creative process like when approaching like a book versus other writing that you've done in the past?
So writing a book is actually my preferred format.
Okay.
So yeah, you know how like when, you know, a child says that they're a writer, there's something that they naturally gravitate to. They're writing poems in the back of their book, or they're writing short stories, or they're, you know, like they kind of like have a natural form that they just like kind of gravitate to as a child, and that's what they work in. I was writing full-length novels when I was like 10 years old. Like I came home with like a, you know, one summer I sat down and I wrote like 100-page single-space story and made my dad print it out at work, and he, you know, like it was a whole thing. Yeah. So my brain works naturally in the novel form. It's actually harder for me to write short fiction and essays. And so the process for me, like, I think I love novels because you get so much space. You get so much time to like really tease things out and really get a sense of somebody, which like you can absolutely do in other forms, but you get to like live in somebody's skin when you write a book, you know, and that's really fun for me because like characters are, I would say like that is like, if I have a gift at anything like literary, I would say it probably is characterization. Like I feel like I write really vibrant characters. And so like the novel piece, and so I will also say this particular novel is a little bit of a different beast because this is a work for hire project. So I did this as like an intellectual property project. I was hired to write this, and you basically get kind of like a small packet, and they're like, this is kind of what we want, like write a book.
Oh, okay.
Like, but like, you
I've
know,
never
like,
heard of that before.
Yeah, it's basically it's called a book packager. And so some of your favorite like TV shows were like packaged. So like Pretty Little Liars, yeah, like stuff like that is like the book. Gossip Girl is like a book packager series. So you know, it's just another entry point into the publishing industry for sure. But yeah, so I got like some direction and they were like, write a book. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, you know, so you know, you have like some things that you got to hit, but I think what's really nice is that, you know, after that initial like, basically we want a Black girl in Paris who like falls in love and she's a theater nerd. Like after that, you know, you kind of get to just like play. You kind of just get to, you know, explore. And I think one of the things that, you know, through the process, the drafting, and the kind of like initial stages, I got to like review a lot of the journals that I kept when I studied abroad, and like lifted ideas for like places that she could go and things like that from like my travels and things like that. So that was really fun. And then I think like just in terms of being practical about the kind of process that happens after that, you write the book and then you spend a lot of time editing it. I would actually say I probably spent more time editing this book than I did writing it, because when you do traditional publishing, your book is going to go through at least 4 stages of editing. And each stage you will probably do like 1 to maybe 3 rounds, depending on the type of people that you're working with. So your first round is going to be like developmental editing, and that's going to be kind of like big picture edits. That's like, you got to move this huge chunk of text. You got to add a storyline. You got to tease out this character. Like that's going to be your first stage. And you do 1, 2, it kind of depends on the editor. Your next round is going to be line edits, where you're kind of making sure that those big shifts that you made in stage 1 are like making sense at the sentence, kind of like the smaller individual level. After you kind of go through that, you're going to do copy edits, and that is like, that's kind of also where fact checking tends to occur. So like that's the stage at which like people are making sure that if I say a street name or something in Paris, that's actually
the real place.
Like that's the place where they're going to be checking some of that stuff, making sure like, hey, you've been spelling this character's name this way for like 2/3 of the book, and then in the last third you just kind of like made up something, you know what I mean? Like that. And then proofreading, which is what it sounds like, you know, checking for spelling errors, grammatical mistakes, things like that. So that whole process takes months. Like going from stage 1 to 4 of editing, and you're doing that for a good long time, which is part of why like any sort of traditionally published book, especially YA, you're looking at probably a good 2 years from, you know, sold the book to shelves.
Got you. So 2 years. So you've been developing and writing this book then for a while. So was it like 2 years for you, this timeline?
It was 3 for me. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Hit some snags, and that happens too. But yeah, so like on average, you know, at least 2 years. I think after you kind of debut, things tend to kind of pick up a little bit of speed. Once, you know, your editor knows your working style, things like that. But you know, I hit some snags, and it's also, again, like I said, because this is a work for hire project and there's like an intermediate level between me and the publisher, there's more people involved. And so more people involved in the project means, you know, longer timelines, because other people have to like look at the stuff as well.
Yeah.
So
multiple people signing off. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, like making sure that it's all, that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned like you and then your editor. So I imagine that relationship is like pretty tight. How did you get linked up with the editor? Like, did they find you for this project, or had you submitted something before? Like, what was that like in terms of getting started with this?
So the company that hired me, the IP company that hired me, I actually wrote a short story for a contest. It was a while ago. I wrote something, and the guest judge really liked the piece that I wrote. I ended up placing second in the contest, and he reached out and was like, hey, like I would love to hire you to write something for my company. Like, what do you think? And that's kind of how that got started. And then in terms of like the editing process, the way or like finding your editor, essentially at that point, you know, the IP company is then sending like they make a submission list of editors that they think would be a good fit for the project, that they submit the project to, and they kind of make the decisions on that end. So it's a little bit different. I will say that like my experience with this book is different than the experience I've had with the second book, Love in 280 Characters or Less, because that works a little bit different. So the role that the IP company is playing in this book, my agent is kind of playing in terms of facilitating and finding editors for this second project.
Yes, because I was going to ask later at the end about the follow-up book, but I really like, but I might as well say something about it now since we're talking about it. I really like that the new book is called Love in 280 Characters or Less, right? Yes. So I'm loving that you are continuing with this theme of having the Black girl protagonist, having like a relatably messy sort of character, and with this storyline. Well, you can tell us a little bit about it yourself. I'm already knowledgeable because I've already checked it out, but let us know what that one's about.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about Love in 280 Characters or Less. It follows Sydney Sierra Warren, who is a freshman at a predominantly white institution in Virginia. She is awkward, she is shy, and her best friend is going to school like 3 hours away. So she thinks her best bet at like making friends and kind of being social is like using her phone as a crutch. So she's on Twitter, she's blogging, she's kind of like writing her way digitally through the experience of being a freshman at college, basically. So I would say this is very much a coming of age story. I would say Love Requires Chocolate is a romance, secondarily a coming of age story, and I would say that Love in 280 Characters or Less is flipped. So I would say it's a coming of age that has a lot of romance. Is the way that I would describe them. Because in a lot of ways, like the story is simply like, what is she experiencing as a Black student, a Black woman at a PWI, and particularly as someone who like thinks she wants to be a writer, she has a little bit of a platform, and like, what is your responsibility to an audience when you are a person in that kind of space, and you have people who are looking to you for information, right? Like, and especially like she just wants to be a fashion writer. So when stuff starts happening on campus that people are like, they want information, she's like, oh, I got to think about what my relationship is to this whole writing business. And of course she doesn't figure it out because she's 18, but like she's thinking about it, right? Like she's basically trying to work with it as best as she can.
That's really great. I'm excited for that one because first of all, that sounds like me. I'm like, that was me using my phone as a crutch all the way through my Virginia PWI. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out. But I kind of what you were saying about the responsibility of writing, like when things happen on campus, like in the story, how do you think that kind of plays into your own life in terms of like your online presence or just like writing, because you currently do have a blog right now, right?
So I was pretty well known, especially like on Twitter, for my blog Black Girl Does Grad School, which I kept all the way through my graduate experience. And I wasn't doing anything except recording what I was going through, because I figured if I didn't know how X, Y, and Z thing in academia worked, I assumed other folks would not know. So I just was recording my experiences. And so I did that for 6 years. I don't currently write on it, but that's kind of like, that's why I have so many followers on Twitter, basically. But I think the question is really important and really good, and my answer is shifting and changing every single day, because when you publish a book, like the stakes in some ways get higher. So even though I was used to writing for an audience, I was used to writing for an audience of like 5 or 6, like, or whatever my Twitter following was, the people that like followed the blog and all that kind of stuff. But I think as you start to publish, and especially since I've made it really clear, like you've already mentioned, like I'm keeping on the theme with like Black girl protagonist, messy Black, because that's my brand. Like my brand is gonna continue to be messy Black girls. Like that's what you're getting when you're coming over here. And I think the thing though about that is that even that is a responsibility. Like you are responsible to an audience, and especially when you write for kids, when you write for young people, I don't want to say that like there's pressure to be a good role model, because that's not what it is either. But what I think is that you are in a position of privilege to write stories that children can use to help them figure things out, that can help them define themselves. Like that is a place of privilege, and I think you should wield that very carefully, right? Like I think you should be very thoughtful about, like, I don't just like pop off anymore. Like I don't just like say the first thing that comes to mind anymore, because I'm thinking about, my words are starting to like really have some longevity, right? And because I'm in the business of writing stories that humanize Black girls, that mission of like being very careful with my words becomes even more important. Because I don't want to be the reason someone thinks that they can say X, Y, and Z about a Black girl, right?
Yep.
Like, I don't want to even do that, right? But my goal is to write stories where Black girls see themselves in a wholeness, in a fullness, where they're not needing to kind of shrink down or only be serious and only be thinking about like, what my place in this world is and trauma and all these kind of things. I think that we live in a world where like race is a reality. And so like, yes, they may think about it. And also, I think that like a girl like Whitney Curry, like clearly she's thinking about race. Her idol is Josephine Baker. She like she's not, you know what I mean? Like she's not like unaware, but she does get to just be joyful and vivacious and effervescent. And I love that for her. And not all of my girls are going to be so happy, but like, I think like we deserve Whitney Curry's,
Right. Yes. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I think that that's something that, even for me, like in terms of like, not even just books, but also like TV shows, things with Black girl protagonists, when they try to do the messy Black girl or like Black girl who's figuring it out, there is such, and to me, it feels like a little bit of a cop out, but having like focusing on race and trauma as like those are the reasons why she is like going through things. It's true that like those things are part of the Black woman experience. There's also, like you said, joyful fun things, falling in love and having a crush, like exploring, loving fashion, like all these different things are also parts of us as well. So I'm glad that you are really holding firm on like not wanting to portray Black girls only in this way, or like if we're going to have a Black girl main character, she must be experiencing racism, and like you're writing all about like the racism she experienced. We understand that, but I'm glad that there are artists and authors and people like you who are trying to remain kind of focused on the whole picture, and not laser in on those things. I think that's providing us like something that's missing a lot right now. And that's just something I'm personally passionate about as well. Because then it's hard for us to read and enjoy ourselves if the only things that we're reflected in are things that are painful and things that are like constantly pulling us back to a place and like portraying us in a way where there is no, being a Black woman is just only suffering. And it's like, I've recently, I did a lot of reading in school, and we would focus on, I took a class called Modern African American Women Writers, and it was cool, the books that we read. And obviously reading YA novels is not part of like a college course material, but that was something that I was really longing for, was having, at least but in that class, it was focused on adult books like by Black women, but it was for adults. But I was kind of like, if there could be some Black woman adult sort of geared books that would also show us Black women as full beings, that would be amazing. So even like with the lane that you're carving in YA right now, I do think it's indicative of a larger shift. Hopefully, I'm really hoping a larger shift towards creating more content that is for us, by us, and like portrays us in a way that we want to be portrayed. I think that's really, really important. And I also want to say, I would pull from something you just said about after you start publishing and like when your platform starts to grow, there's a little bit more responsibility. Have you, I imagine you were maybe nervous a little bit to kind of put your debut novel out there. Were you nervous about how it would be received at all? Like, how has it been now that it's actually out there, now that you're starting to get your first readers and getting some feedback? How has that been?
Okay, so two things. I'm going to answer your question about like feedback, and then I'm also going to say something very quickly to just like, just for the record, like the things that I'm saying are like about, you know, Black girls and how we're portrayed is absolutely not new. The lane has been like burst open by people like Renee Watson, Jacqueline Woodson, like Evie Savoy. Like there's so many, and like those are just like contemporary writers. Like we could talk about fantasy. Like there's so many good like doing this work right now. So I'm happy to even pull together like a supplementary reading list. Like if we need that, because I have it in YA, I could do it for adult. Like there's so many good stories I think out there that, you know, do complicated well. I think the one caveat though is that once you start really asking for complicated Black girls, you also have to sit with the truth of you may not like the protagonist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like once you, I think that's where some of us get a little bit lost. Like sometimes you are not going to like the protagonist, and you are sometimes not meant to. Okay, like that's my only thing there. Now to answer your question about reception, I I think I have a complicated relationship to like reception. I don't think I ever was really nervous about like putting it out. At least not in the way that you would initially think.
Mm-hmm.
I think really my big concern about putting it out in the world was that I wanted to do well enough so that I could write more books, right? Like I didn't want to be like a one-trick pony. Like I want the sales to be good enough so that I can write more stories, so that y'all can fight about what's your favorite Ravynn K. Stringfield book. So that, you know what I mean? Like that's, you know, like that's the energy. And that's part of kind of one of the issues is that like, yes, you know, we want to talk about like Black girls doing different things, but the fact of the matter is publishing is an industry that is controlled largely by white folks who, and so you are now trying to convince 73% of white publishing professionals why you should publish this book about a Black girl that's not doing things the way that you expect a Black girl to be doing them, right? So that's, so you know, it's like I'm not really thinking about reception, and I'm also like hyper aware of it because like y'all are the people that are like finally, or like at the end of the day, going to tell publishing we want more of this, right? But again, you know, part of this issue, and this is, you know, this is like an industry kind of like critique, right, is that like a lot of times we also treat readers of books as like a single demographic. We tend not to cater to like all of the diversity of readers that there are as well. When that happens, you know, I guess the problem becomes if you have this one ideal or like average reader in mind, and they as a collective decide we don't like this book because we don't relate, we can't relate, we don't know anything about this, you're kind of like dead in the water, right? Like you're, you know, there's some of that as well going on. So I'm thinking about those types of things as reception. But, and this is, you know, and I guess the reason why that comes up for me too is that I get a few critiques about the book, or like I've read a few critiques of the book because I am like obnoxiously curious. I do like look at the Goodreads, like, you know, I just want to know what people are saying because I'm curious, but I don't let it over it basically. But a couple of the things that, you know, you get are like, I just can't relate to this character typically from a white reader. That's fine. And then the other one that comes up a lot is that like Whitney is insufferable. Whitney is annoying, and I don't like her, you know, and so like I don't like the protagonist. I don't like her voice. And the thing that's really that I hit there is that, first of all, Whitney is supposed to be annoying. She's supposed to be 17. I don't know when the last time you talked to a 17-year-old, but they're not always like, you know what I mean? They're 17.
Right.
They're 17. She's got a gloriously sunny and youthful outlook on the world because she hasn't lived enough of it yet to be that mature, right?
Mhm.
Like as much as she wants to be and as much as she wants to play dress up in the vintage clothes and look at her, she's 17. And there is something to be said about asking yourself why you don't like the voice of a Black girl that is a child. Why don't you like the voice of a Black girl who's getting to be a teenager? I'm not saying like, you know, that I'm not saying it's as an indictment, but I'm genuinely asking it as a question because I have written this book specifically for teenagers, specifically for young people. So if you as an adult, I think it's different if you're a teenager you're reading it. But if you're an
Right.
adult and you're reading this book and you don't like the youthful voice, is it perhaps that you don't like the youthful voice coming from a Black girl because that's not how you understand Black girls? You
Right.
have to ask yourself that question, right?
Yeah. And I'm asking myself that question because, I mean, when I was reading it, they're like, I don't like the voice. It was definitely like a teenage voice. And even to me, I'm like, it wasn't particularly like a super but see, maybe that's what you're talking about. Like, I'm like, you know, it wasn't like a super Black voice. Like what would make it so that they're like, I don't like this voice? It was giving very much regular YA. She's a teenager. Oh, but you know what, Ravynn? It has to do with the fact that you wrote it in first person. And so Whitney is describing her experience, like saying I this and I that. I wonder if that has to do with like the kind of off-puttingness of it, because it's like if I like a teenager, she's a teenager, but she's a Black teenager, and the way she's speaking, it's not that far off from any other teenager. But I wonder if reading it and either relating or directly not relating, I wonder what sort of feelings that brings up in readers who are expecting something specific. They see that the book is about a Black girl, they're expecting something specific, and then they read it, it's in first person, and they're like, maybe they don't want to see themselves in the character. Maybe they're like, oh, I used to be a teenager too, but this is a little bit too, I was expecting something different, and I don't necessarily want to open myself up to the idea that like, this is what the voice of a Black girl who's a theater nerd who is like this is who she is. This is what it sounds like. That's very interesting that maybe I'll check out some of these Goodreads reviews. I'm like, what are y'all saying about this? Because that is very interesting. And I think also I think in the larger kind of cultural context too, if you think about recently things like everyone being like, I'm just a girl, and the reclamation of girlhood and things like that, you would think people would be actually a little bit more receptive and open to the idea of girlhood and all of its different sort of forms and regardless of race. But I think it's very interesting what you're saying, that people have such a strong reaction to, because people don't act like that necessarily to annoying white girl teenage character. Like everybody kind of gets that she's like a teenager and this is how. So something about, you're touching on something here that is actually a really good point. And I wonder actually now with your follow-up novel, with her name is Sydney, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder if like with the slight older character, I wonder how those dynamics will play out, because also probably with older readers, there might be some older readers as well, who are maybe college age, who are like seeing themselves in the character. I wonder how they'll feel. I think, Black girls, but this is exactly why we need this. Black girls as main characters, it does bring up feelings for people, because even in TV shows and things like that, there's always some sort of, this isn't what I expected, or I don't like this because it's not catering to like what I would want to happen, but that's just not who the character is. So I'm really glad that you are, like you said, like Messy Black Girls is your brand. I'm glad that you are continuing to like create these nuanced characters, these characters who are not living up to anyone's expectations except for your own, because it's true, you are representing Black women who really are like this in real life. And the more that we do that, the more we normalize it, the more that we make people uncomfortable a little bit, then they have to become comfortable. That's how we'll be able to push forward in media with representation in media. So I'm not sorry, I guess, that people have reacted that way. I actually think that's a good thing, because that's showing that you're really pushing on a boundary. You're really kind of picking up on something and going in a direction that we continue to go.
And to tell you the truth, the my favorite review of Love Requires Chocolate was actually the first 2-star review that I think I saw, and it was literally just that, like, Whitney was annoying, and like the review went on, and I said, well, I did my job, because the thing that I was supposed to be doing was to write somebody who felt like a real human, and real people, most people don't like everyone they meet. So my goal, like, if everyone had liked her, I wouldn't have done my job very well. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if everyone liked her, there's got to be something about her that feels real enough, that she's got sharp edges that you rub up against, right? And some people, the sharpness is okay, and for some people, it's not, right?
Right.
And then I think also to this larger point, this is also where I'm going to suggest that everybody go read Playing in the Dark by Toni Morrison, because some of these questions are failures of imagination, right? Like, some of the things that we're talking about are a literal failure of imagination. So I'm going to recommend that, like, if you want to talk about these things more deeply, I kind of thought about Playing in the Dark more in fantasy, and I pair it oftentimes with Ebony Elizabeth Thomas's The Dark Fantastic: Race in the Imagination, from Harry Potter to the Hunger Games, because again, like, I was working on Black girl superheroes, but like, all of these things are still really important to, like, this kind of contemporary romance story that we're writing as well. I think the last thing that I'll say is that, like, honestly, I don't think that people are gonna like Sydney's voice any more than Whitney's. I think she's different, but, like, I don't think that she's kind of annoying in a different kind of way. Like, Sid is like, she's your friend that, like, can't get out of her head, that can't like, that, like, you want her so badly to just do something, anything, go outside, touch grass, but she's still mad about something that happened like 4 years ago and is still kind of like turning it over in her head. You know what I mean? Like, she's just like a different kind of energy, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that one. I really think I like making people mad, because I do think I agree with you. Like, if everybody's not for everybody, and if she was completely likable to everyone, then that's true. Maybe you did not flesh out the character enough for her to be a fully developed person. So I think that was a really smart way of thinking about it. Okay, that's great. So we do know that book is coming out next. Can you let us know when that is coming out? When is the release date, so we can pre-order, we can get ready?
Yes, Love in 280 Characters or Less comes out on April 15th, 2025. And you can pre-order that pretty much wherever books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, like pretty much wherever books are sold.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And then, are you going to, I don't know if it's too early to talk about or not, but are you planning on writing another book after that? Like, what's next in terms of your writing career? Another book? Really?
Yeah, I wrote several manuscripts while I was in grad school, and so the hope is that, like, we're able to push one of those through next. Like, that would be my hope. I really want, I wrote one about a girl dealing with grief, and part of her grief journey involves her doing a debutante cotillion, but unfortunately she gets stuck with her mom's line sister's son, who she hates, as an escort. So that is my third, or hopefully that'll be another book that comes through. That she's my grief baby. I think everyone has a different kind of thing that they're really struggling with. I think Whitney's is kind of like maintaining a sense of self. I would say Sid's is like anxiety, and then I think Third book is definitely like a kind of grief depression sort of struggle.
Yeah. And I actually like that there's the way you just categorized it with the different things that they're struggling with. I think that really makes sense. Even from like what I've read and from what you just how you just described the characters. Because yeah, especially with Sydney, you're like she's using the phone as a crutch because she's so anxious, you know. So all of those things are really connected. And I think even with Not Okay Club and with how we use like crafting, crocheting as a way to manage those types of things, I can see how, like, you know, maybe you could say crochet is a crutch, but I do like that there's like creative representation and ways to like get those feelings out. Like you said, that was your grief baby, like being able to write a story and have that be a way for even you yourself to kind of make sense of some things, to process your own experiences and then reflect that back so that people can relate to that. It's really, really important. And so I'm just personally excited to see where you go from here. But I do want to let you have a little plug about your crochet top that you're wearing, and let us know if there's any other crochet projects you're working on. And then also you can share what your social media stuff is so that we can follow along with both your crochet journey and with the books that you're coming out, your writing journey.
Yeah, so this is my top. There's out of patterns because basically I saw one of my mutuals on TikTok, she made a top that was very similar to this, and I was like, okay, well, I know that's a willow granny square, so I'll just finesse, like I'll just like figure out something similar. So like I just saw that and I was like, this is how I'm gonna make mine. So I made this. My work in progress is a sunflower cardigan, so I'm gonna do just like a plain cardigan in this color and add some like sunflower details. And then the social media handle. So I'm at Ravynn Kamia, RavynnKamia on everything except for TikTok because for some reason that was taken. So I'm Ravynn Stringfield on TikTok. Yes, it's very annoying. It's very annoying. It's deeply annoying. I need everything to be the same and it's not. But yeah, it's Ravynn Stringfield on TikTok. And was there anything else I was supposed to say?
I think that was it. No, I think that was it. I feel your pain on when there's that one platform where it's not the same, so you can't tell them that it's the same thing on everything. Oh my gosh, that's literally me too. And I'm like, but for you, I'm like, they got your first and your middle name. How they take your username like that?
How? First of all, my first name wasn't even spelled like everyone else's. So how'd you get that? And you got my like middle name that's like it's not a usual middle name. Like how'd you do that?
I'm like, who is this other Ravynn Kamia running around? We gotta talk to her and be like, sis, could you potentially change your username?
I know, right?
That is so funny. Okay, well, I do want to say thank you so much for your time today, Ravynn. I could talk about this all day, but I do think what would be awesome, we can talk about it later, is potentially having a reading list of like your recommendations for other books that Black girls can read that have similar vibes to your book, or just that you think that Black girls would be interested in terms of book girl main character, just anything like be awesome. I'm sure that people in the club would really enjoy that. And I would like some recommendations because I'm trying to start reading more for fun. I really kind of doing mostly like academic and psychological type reading, and I'm kind of tired of all that. I'd like to read some more fun books. So if you have recommendations, that would be great. And I do want to ask if there are any other questions. Joe, if you have any questions. If not, we can also send you any questions that we may have because we'll be in contact with you on the Discord since you are in the Discord with us. But yeah, I would love to see the sunflower cardigan when that is done. But if there are not any other questions, then I think I will let you go and we'll see you online. We'll see you in the chat.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, guys.
Thanks for coming by and talking. I really I really enjoyed like how you were talking about it. It reminds me a lot of like my young, cute writing days. I
Oh,
need to get back into it too, but
do it. It's
I know.
Okay,
I've been
wow.
saying that for like 3 years now. But
Yeah,
thank you
maybe we'll
so
start
much
like
for
a Not
coming.
Okay blog, and you can write there. Because there's a lot of other people who
No,
are
and you know what's
interested in
really
writing.
sick? I've been saying that. I've been saying that like in the back of my brain, and I just haven't actually said it to you. So
Yeah, maybe we can get that together. We'll definitely talk about that. All right. I will see you. I'm like, actually, I'll text you about that right now. But
Okay.
thank you so much again. And yes, Ravynn, we will talk to you soon.
all right. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.